pleasant, good Sunday morning to you, and welcome to Experts on Call on CFON 1410 AM and our monthly visit with Dr. Paul Swingle for our special radio show called It's All in Your Head. We're happy to have you along and happy to welcome Dr. Paul Swingle, a psychoneurophysiologist. He helped me with the longer words, I noticed. Welcome, Dr. Paul. Before we even get into what is neurotherapy and what we're going to talk about, what turned you on to this particular field? How did you get involved in it?
Well, it goes back about 35 years or so. Originally, what we were doing is looking at how brain activity was associated with various conditions like depression, muscle movements, and so forth. That was before we had a lot of high-speed computers and so forth, so it wasn't really a viable clinical option. We discovered some brain conditions that were associated with depression, for example. Then we discovered that animals could control their own brainwave activity, and it seemed obvious that if you could change the brain, you would change the condition associated with that, and that was the birth of neurotherapy. When I started, we made our own computers. That's how old I am. And they all worked, by the way. So that's the origin of it. There's nothing new about neurotherapy. It goes back about 4 decades. It was originally successfully used in the treatment of epilepsy. Subsequently, we've been able to develop treatment procedures for a very wide range of disorders. It's all FDA certified and compliant, by the way, in the United States, so there's nothing alternative in that sense about it. It's a mainline treatment option as opposed to medicating.
And also there's a scientific medical, it's not medicine, it's medical, and it's scientific too. It's not holistic type therapy.
Yeah, it has a very strong scientific base for it, for all of the treatment options that we do.
Well, welcome. Today we're going to talk about autism and Asperger's, and they're very specialized type of treatments and type of afflictions, but I know that there's a lot of people, and you've said that there seems to be an epidemic of these two particular type of afflictions right now. Why do you think that is?
My own feeling is that it's what we've done to the environment. We've had between a 5 and a 10-fold increase in the incidence of autism and Asperger's over the last 10 or 15 years or so. So we're up in the range now of about 60 children per 1,000, which is a huge number. And that's not considering conditions like Asperger's, pervasive development disorder, Rett syndrome, which are kind of variants on the autistic spectrum disorder. Autism is a developmental problem. There's an area of the brain that doesn't develop properly, and these children just have no interest or recognition, I guess is a better word, of other people as emotional beings, so that when you walk into the room, they're not aware of you there. So that the typical symptoms associated with no eye contact, no interest, no involvement in interacting with the other individuals is one of the hallmark indicators of autism. It differs from Asperger's. Asperger's, the child may be very interested in interacting with another person, but they are socially extremely awkward and have a lot of very peculiar social behaviors. There's a different area of the brain that didn't develop properly so that they want to interact with other individuals. They recognize them as emotional beings, but they don't have the skill set because that area of the brain hasn't developed properly. So that's the basic difference between these two disorders.
You're listening to It's All in Your Head with Dr. Paul Swingle of Swingle and Associates. The telephone number is 608-0444, 608-0444, and Dr. Paul's website is www.swingleandassociates.com. Swingle, by the way, is swing, L-E. Dr. Paul is here to take your phone calls if you have any questions specifically pertaining to autism and Asperger's, because it's a very specialized type of therapy that you do, and you're a real leader in North America with regards to this type of therapy. Why is that?
One of the problems with trying to use neurotherapy with autistic children is the child is not capable of paying attention to the feedback associated with neurotherapy. So that basically in neurotherapy, what we're doing is modifying brain activity. And the way we do that is we set it up so that when the brain is doing what we want it to do, Pac-Man moves on the screen or some other video game type icon moves, and the child becomes interested in that and starts modifying brain activity by playing a video game with their brain. Now, an autistic child can't attend, or at least a lot of them can't attend to that, so we had to develop what we refer to as non-volitional forms of modifying brain activity, and my clinic is #1 in North America in the development of those procedures. We actually developed some devices that are now being used by a number of other clinics around North America. But basically what we do is we measure a particular aspect of brain functioning. Based on that measurement, we stimulate with light, sound, to suppress or enhance a particular waveform so that we can modify the brain activity without the child being attentive to the screen. Then once they acquire those skills, once treatment develops, one of the milestones is, does the child then become capable of regular neurotherapy, which is playing, as I say, playing a video game with their brain. And that's a marvelous breakthrough when that happens.
Now, how early in a child's development can you tell that they are either autistic or may have Asperger's?
Mothers can tell very early. It's almost always apparent by 2 or 3 years of age. A lot of mothers tell me that they knew 6 or 8 months. The child just doesn't develop the way you expect a child to develop. They don't develop interest in other individuals. Another individual enters the room. There's no responding to that other individual, that kind of thing. That's one of the problems that pediatricians have. Pediatricians are trying desperately not to alarm parents, so that when a mother brings a child in and she's concerned about a particular kind of behavior, the pediatrician is likely to say, don't worry. It's a growth phase. There's a little bit of a lag here. He'll catch up, that kind of thing. And there's a good reason for that, not to alarm the mother or the parents. But the flip side of that is you may miss something. And early intervention is really critical. So that a lot of pediatricians and physicians now, if they're at all suspicious, they'll send the child to somebody who has an expertise in this area to try to determine if there is, in fact, a problem.
Dr. Paul Swingle joins us. It's all in your head. The website address, www.swingleandassociates.com. Again, Swingle is spelled Swing-L-E. As we discuss psychoneurophysiology with Dr. Paul Swingle, and in particular, we're talking about autism and Asperger's today. And I guess there are varying degrees of severity when it comes to autism. I guess we all get this thought in our mind about autism as being something along the lines of Dustin Hoffman's role in Rain Man. How accurate is that, and what are some of the other myths that we have as a society about autism?
Savant conditions are quite rare, the kind of thing that was portrayed by Hoffman in Rain Man. Savant skills are individuals who have very unique abilities, like the ability to memorize a phone book, for example, or extremely unusual artistic talent. It's relatively rare. What isn't rare is hyper-focus on a particular area of interest. And it can be anything. It could be a microwave, for example. It can be horses. It can be dogs. It can be coins, turtles, whatever. And it is something that perseverates and occupies the child's attention nonstop in a very annoying kind of way. Let me give you an example. An Asperger's child had a very profound interest in horses. He would go on for hours and hours and hours and hours talking about very technical aspects of it. Now, the child was involved with a peer group, and he was trying to explain the difference between standard bred and thoroughbred horses to these kids. And like most young 8-year-olds, they had an attention span of about 35 seconds. And at the end of this time, they got very bored and tried to move away from this child. The child would follow them and tried to go through all of the details associated with the difference between standard bred and thoroughbred horses until the children started to tease and become very aggressive with the child, trying to get away from him. Now, that's the kind of perseverative behavior that you get in something like Asperger's. That's much more common than any savant skills. Now, that also suggests a method of treatment for these children. If a child has a profound interest in something, that can be a teaching mechanism. For example, if you have 3 standard-bred horses and 12 thoroughbred horses, how many horses do you have? So in other words, you're incorporating the child's particular interest as a teaching mechanism. By the way, that's a good example of Asperger's, in which the child deeply wants to interact with another child, but just has no skills at all and can't read the social nonverbal indicators that the other child is just not interested.
Interesting. Dr. Paul Swingle joins us. It's all in your head, and you can find out more by visiting his website at swingleandassociates.com. The telephone number for Dr. Swingle's clinic is 608-0444. And I'm assuming you have a lot of parents who come in and their children are autistic, or they have a child that's autistic, and they've gone through maybe some other forms of therapy, or they've tried to get some other forms of therapy. Is medication one of those things that is recommended, or is that obviously something that you want to stay away from, but is that something that the medical field is trying to do?
There's a strong tendency to try to sedate these children, try to medicate the symptom away. And I think that's a profound mistake. There are some things you can do. For example, there's been some interesting work done in the United States on an amino acid, L-carnosine. I know the folks up at Finlandia Pharmacy have L-carnosine. Be happy to chat.